What's up, Zach here, and today I've got the all-new Wade Shadow 6 V2, and thanks to Wade for getting me a pair of these. Check out. However, this video is not sponsored, and as always, all opinions, good, bad, and indifferent, are all my own. All right, now when I was looking these up on the Wade website, they were talking about the cool shell and how this update was mainly to give you more, comfort, performance in the summer months. Honestly, I never thought the Shadow 6 was all that bad in terms of outdoor performance, in terms of, keeping your feet cool and breathability. We'll see if these are any better. There are definitely some differences for sure. Yeah, this is gonna be interesting because the Shadow 6 to me is one of my favorites. If you've seen the top 5 outdoor shoes, you'll kind of know all about that. I'll leave that link in the description below if you want to see all the other ones that I thought were kind of measured up to this, but this was definitely a benchmark for outdoors. So starting off in the uppers, obviously there's changes. You've got a very, very thin like TPU woven mesh here on the most peripheral layer here of the uppers. Now going into the quarters of the shoe, which is kind of like the mid part of the shoe, you do have a gusseted tongue. It's a low gusset. Then you actually do have an extra rope here on the inside for a little bit more tie down. But in the forefoot, you actually are getting basically the same amount of padding going through, I'd say like 70% of the tongue in the forefoot. So you still have quite a bit of padding underneath of that outside layer. Even though the outside layer looks really thin, there definitely is some padding in there. You look at this thing on the breathability test, it still did heat up 99.7 degrees, and that's on my new heat gun. And so, the old Shadow 6 wasn't all that much worse. And so, yeah, it's definitely good. You look at the breathability mapping with the fog machine, and yeah, I mean, just fog's blowing out of everywhere. It takes a second, but fog's blowing out everywhere. I think where the real benefit you get with this upper is it's just lighter. So you get a lighter upper with the same breathability. So that's kind of where I think that comes from. The containment is really just the same in terms of heel slippage. If there's no orthotic in there, heel slippage is none. If you have an orthotic in there, heel slippage is very, very mild. You do get a lot of padding that comes up over the ankle collar and the heel counter. Like I said, the tongue isn't all that padded. I would say if you do have an orthotic in there, the lace irritation, I would say if you want to get rid of lace irritation, a simple tongue pad, really any configuration of tongue pad, will get you going there. If you want to know how to do that, I do have an ebook coming out. You can check that out there with all the different techniques on how to make tongue pads depending on your particular needs. So I'll leave that link in the description below. But with a tongue pad in there, really mild to no lace irritation and really mild to no heel slippage. Without those tongue paddings in there, you're going to get mild to moderate lace irritation and just very, very little heel slippage. Now look at this thing on the upper durability test, 10-second tie grit sandpaper. Yeah, I mean, the burr does start to work that a little bit, but it is really thick drag guard, so I don't think you really have too big of a problem. The thing is, you do have exposed boom foam on the outside, so that's what's going to start to get worked. But I think in terms of everything else, I think you should, like I said, the uppers are going to be protected. That exposed boom might be the only thing that's going to start to look a little bit scuffed up. One thing I forgot to mention here in the uppers, though, is in the rear foot, the foxing on the outside, it's really substantial, and it's almost like 2 layers, but it also moves really well. So that was another update to the uppers. On the old one, it just looks like synthetic nubuck or something like that. Whereas on these ones, maybe a little more structural, but also the same amount of bending and flowing on there. So yeah, I really like it. Put it that way. It's a small tweak, small upgrade, but I definitely noticed it. All right, getting into the midsole teardown, the one thing I did do was I tore it down a little bit further medially, see if I could see anything new. The midsole is exactly the same as the Shadow 6. It's a full bed of boom foam, really nothing wrong with that. And then that shank is really long, and that plastic, I mean, it does appear to be pretty darn thick on the slice I got of it. And on the old one, yeah, it's pretty much the same. You do have a netted strobel board. Interestingly enough, on the diving board test over there, it only took 46 newtons to bend it, but the snapback on these was quite a bit more than some other shoes that it took more newtons to press up, which I thought was kind of interesting. Like the shoe is it's pretty compliant when you want to bend it, but it still does want to snap back. And I thought that was pretty cool. Bounce height test, obviously it's the exact same, 38 in the rear foot, 41 in the forefoot. Really no shocker there. I will be interested to see though in the coming months into like end of 2025 into 2026 if they're going to start incorporating the super boom like in the new 808s. Hopefully we'll start to see that in some of their more integrated midsoles. Boom foam is still fantastic, but just for me, just intellectually, just based on my interest, I'd just love to see what that does integrated into the shoe versus in a drop, and I think you're going to even see even more performance. Getting into the outsole tread, it's the exact same as the Shadow 6. You do get this really flat piece of rubber here in the forefoot on the drag guard, which especially for gritty outdoor courts is really nice. Then you get basically just a triangular checkerboard, like they're triangles that make squares on the medial side. And then you basically just have a spaghetti against the wall pattern throughout the rest of the shoe. It is 2 tread pods. And like I said, doesn't matter what the tread is as long as it's multi-directional these days. There is micro texturing on this also, which is great. Same thing on the grip test ramp with these things. They slip at 39 degrees. And yeah, I mean, for static grip, that's decent. In terms of dynamic grip though, the nature of the tread is just does not pick up all that much dust for me. This colorway of it picked up really no dust, I mean mild, and the grip was consistent. Same thing on polished concrete. I mean, this is slick concrete and I was still not going anywhere. Honestly, these things were grabbing crazy into that polished concrete. I could feel my foot kind of pushing up against the uppers more on the concrete versus on the indoor hardwood or vinyl, and typically it's the opposite. So yeah, in terms of a shoe for both surfaces, yeah, they do absolutely fantastic. Look at these things on the speed ratio. They come in at a 2.97. Shank score 0.3 bumps that up to a 3.27. And yeah, it's a little bit more than the Shadow 6 because they're just a little bit lighter. That's the only difference. And I really think they really do deserve to be in that mid 3s just because they're light. That snapback you saw in that springboard or diving board test, whatever I'm going to call it, same thing. It really is giving you a lot on the back end. I think these are some of the quicker shoes out there also because they just kind of fit and kind of conform to your foot really well. They feel one-to-one, especially if you have more orthotic in these things. They really push off really well, especially because remember that shank is bottom loaded and it's long and you got the orthotic on top. It's almost like creating like 2 shanks almost. I mean, yeah, the orthotic's not incorporated into the shoe, but that's just kind of how it feels underfoot. So in terms of speed, yeah, really fantastic. These things on the outsole durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper. Yeah, basically Bird just starts cleaning them off, not a millimeter of damage. And remember, with these new rubber compounds, yeah, I mean, the durometer on this is 19, so it's a little bit higher, but with Li-Ning's new rubber compounds and some other companies too, the durometer doesn't matter as much anymore. You kind of have to look at it holistically. I'm actually trying to rework, I got some in my eye. I'm trying to rework the burr test to maybe do it a little bit differently to try to capture what these new rubber compounds can do. So that's going to be coming down the pipeline. I'm still trying to work that out. I might have to like make something in the desk to actually do that. So yeah, switching studios too, by the way, that's a whole other thing. Moving, building a whole new studio, that's going to be fun too, but that's for another video. That's for a whole other time. But yeah, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to work that in to my new workflow. But yeah, in terms of speed, durability, really on any surface you put these on, after that tangent, yeah, I think they're absolutely fantastic. And in terms of fit, the Shadow 6 V2, really similar to the Shadow 6, I will say, because the uppers are a little bit lighter, maybe just a little bit more malleable. They're just maybe a little bit also more accepting. They still have an 11-degree in flare. The length is only 28.6 centimeters, so maybe just a hair short, and then a heel width of 6.3 centimeters, narrowest midfoot measurement of only 6 centimeters. They're pretty narrow in the midfoot, then 9.6 centimeter maximal metatarsal width, and then toe box width of 10.6 centimeters. I know I had it written down that the toe box width was only 10 centimeters on these. I think I may have written down the wrong shoe for the original Shadow 6. I think I may have been doing something else too at the same time. So that was an error if you see a 10 on toe box width of the original Shadow 6. My apologies for that. Toe box taper is 29 degrees, so they do get a little bit more narrow there in the forefoot in terms of the taper, but really same rules apply on these ones versus the Shadow 6 in terms of fit, so the same graphic up there. It's just that, like I said, these are gonna be just a little bit easier to break in. In terms of the snake bitten foot or people I'll be recommending these for, really also the exact same. If you want protection underfoot, especially in the heel, right? Because look at the resting position of eversion, 0 degrees, only goes to 1 degree with loading. So protection of the heel from micromotion, like for Achilles tendonitis, plantar fasciitis, anything like that. Forefoot pain, especially people with previous stress fractures, capsulitis, hallux limitus, bursitis, things like that. That longer shank that gives maybe just a little bit more, like I said, compliance, but gives enough back in return that you're not having to put a ton of force through there to get through your gait cycle. I really think that's a perfect combination, especially for outdoor courts. So I know Wave Wade markets these as an outdoor shoe, and they've made a second version of them for hot summer days. And I know that there's a lot of marketing in terms of the outdoor stuff, but in this case, it does ring true. That there is, they actually can back it up with these. So honestly, not only one of my favorite outdoor shoes of the year, these are one of just my favorite all-around shoes, just because I think the versatility is there, whether they make it into the top 5 list in the generic category, in the general category, coming up in a few videos, remains to be seen. But I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you do want to see what I'm talking about, that Super Boom foam in the new Wave Wade 808 line, because it is nuts, I will leave that video linked right here. Make sure you subscribe down below. Respect, rubber, and foam. I'll see you soon in the Thingiverse.